Okay. Well, I'm so excited, you guys. We have someone that I am just so excited to talk to. His name is Michael Kilpatrick, and he has something that I wasn't aware of before, but man, I wish I had known about it sooner, called the Thriving Farmer Podcast. And Michael, you've done some really awesome podcast interviews with various different producers, and then also that aspect of farm management, the business side of farming. And I'm just really excited to hear about you because you are a farmer as well. How that process of setting up your farm in the first place went, how that happened, what your farm looks like, and then what changes you made and how you decided what to change. So I understand you have a lot of good graphics and pictures for us, so that'll be awesome. And so just tell us a little bit about how your farm was originally set up when you got there.
Yeah, so actually we're on our second farm now. So back in 2003, my parents purchased land in upstate New York. And so we started our first farm on that. And that grew over a decade till we were managing, I think, 6 different pieces of property and about 500 acres total. So that was pretty scaled, and we learned a lot, kind of like good things, bad things, what things we had to worry about for there. And then I've also, in our online business, I've worked with farmers all across the US. So I've been out west and looked at, where they have water rights, and down in Florida where, you have inches of rain every afternoon. So kind of the things you have to think about there. So all sorts of things went into our new farm, which we purchased in July of 2020. And actually, we started looking back in 2017 for this property, but it took us 3 years to find because we were so picky, because we knew exactly what we wanted. And we had to find the right piece. And so this ended up being the right piece for us. And so we'll talk through a little bit about, I'll show you first, like what the site was. And one of the reasons we wanted this site was it was pretty much a blank slate. There was some infrastructure on it, but because many farms need very purpose-built infrastructure, you want that blank slate to start from the ground up. And then the other aspect is we're always looking, so some key things we're looking for, obviously. One thing is you always want to have customers. Like if you're a farm, you don't have customers, you're in trouble. So we were always looking at where is this farm located and the proximity to markets. Now, are you going to go to your customers, or your customers going to come to you? So for us, we wanted our customers to come to us. That's why we purchased an urban farm. And so we have, within 45 minutes of us, it's like 1 million people. And we're on a road with 12,000 people driving by a day. So in the time of this interview, we'll probably, by my window, have 1,000 people go by our window. So the drive-by is actually pretty good. Although, when we run the numbers of where our customers find us with our annual surveys, drive-by is never as big as you think. And maybe that's because of how the farm site is set up. And we'll get into that once we talk about setup. So customers is going to be big. Water is another massive thing for us. Back in New York, we struggled with water. We had to find specific pieces of property based on water in our valley. And so that's super important for us. Here we are unlimited water. We're sitting in an aquifer that's one of the top 5 in the nation. You go down 60 feet and you get 100 gallons a minute, no problem. Actually, one of the local wells tests at like 267 gallons a minute or something. So wow. Tremendous amounts of water. Third one, soil. So if you don't have great soil, if you're a vegetable farm and you've got clay soil, that can be a big red flag and a big challenge. So picking your farm for what you want to do based on your soil is going to be absolutely key. So we live on we're a silty loam soil, some sand in there too. So top 14 to 18 inches is really nice. You get down to a layer of a little bit more clayish. And then below that, about 6 or 8 inches of clay, you get into basically river run gravel. So basically we could become a gravel pit if they wanted it to. And actually that's where the land value is much more valuable as a gravel pit than anything we're doing above, just because of the dollar value of what gravel's worth. So there's always that exit option if we have to, although getting a permit for this would be almost impossible to that point. But that is the soil is a key aspect. Other things that is proximity to family. I'm always a huge aspect of, if you have a young family like I do, you need the power of community to make your farm work. And so for us, being near family within 15 minutes was super important. The other thing is a good local support network, and other farmers and like hardware stores were across the street from a machine shop, which has been highly valuable for fixing things or getting new things done. And they're super great over there. I'll take them something and say, I'm thinking of this. And 24, 48 hours later, they kick me back something that's, you know, machine quality. So that's super great. That was just an added bonus. And then we have a hardware store that's 150 yards from our door as well. Now, not only are they our hardware store and we have an account there and we buy all our lumber and supplies and other things, even though they're more expensive, but they also take all our trucking to their location and they don't charge us a dime. So we have pallets of peaches show up. We have pallets of soil show up. We have our row cover and all of that. They offload it. They text me and say, hey, you got another pallet that showed up. And they're even storage down there sometimes as well. So again, we've created some great relationships in our community. And again, they weren't things that we went out looking for, but they were things that we were like, oh, you know, this would be an advantage of this property. And that's why we're going to pick this property over something else. One of the things you have to think about too is access. So our farm doesn't have great tractor trailer access, although that place does. So we were able to say the farm doesn't have to have great trailer access because of that place. The other thing you want is utilities. So high electric, high powered internet, you know, a cable, that sort of thing. 3-phase power. We're on a natural gas line, so we have natural gas for all our greenhouses and stuff. So those are all things you want to think about as well. But those are the different things that we were thinking about as we were looking at this property. Just kind of like they were the boxes we wanted to tick before we plunked down a lot of money you're going to spend for property these days. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that layout of the criteria that you were using to kind of find something. A lot of people are kind of inherit something or have to work with what they have, and that's a little bit more tricky, I think. But maybe not tricky, but just coming from kind of a different perspective and having to deal with some of those other things. My farm is clear out in the boonies and I don't have a market, so I have to take all my products someplace else. So that's a big deal. Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool.
So with that though too, that is something that you just have to gear your cropping to. So let's say yours out in the boonies, you're going to focus on something that's a lot tighter. Now, one with our Farmstead Wellness brand, which is our fire cider brand, and we do some tinctures and stuff, you know, a case of that is several $100s. So it's very easy for us to take that in a vehicle and travel to a show several hours away. We can fit thousands and thousands of dollars in literally a Prius. But if you're growing vegetables, salad mix, a 10-pound bag, you can only fit 6 or 8 of those in a case. So that means you're maxing out at $100 a case, and you can only fit like $800 in your car. So the type of product you go for with the direct, how far you are from the market is going to also make things like new pick strawberries would not work 3 hours out from, you know, only in a town of 1,000 people. There's just not going to be. But where we are, I mean, gosh, we can charge a tremendous amount, and it really works out really well for us.
Perfect.
So yeah, great aspect you thought there of the distance from your market and kind of what you're going to set up for what you're going to sell. One thing I would say is I got some pictures here of the original farm. So you want me to pull those up and share those? All right.
That'd be awesome.
I don't have this. I don't think is the drone footage, but this has, you know, the original pictures there. Can you see that there? It's just an open cornfield.
Yep, we can see it.
All right. So that's one of the shots from the roof of the farm. And that's actually been one of the great things about this is it's got a staircase that goes all the way to the roof, and we can go out there and get pictures and sit up there sometimes at night and watch the stars. But basically, you know, the farmhouse is right at the front of the farm, and then you got your big field behind it. And this was the only building on the farm, which was a 30 by 50 foot barn. So my wife and I are suckers for old houses. And so this is a 1890 and 1907 or something like that brick farmhouse. And so we instantly fell in love with it. It's got beautiful woodwork inside and just the whole aspect of it, big shade trees in the front yard. So the house ticked the boxes for us, even though, I mean, the amount we spend on heating and cooling that place is ridiculous. But you can just see, I mean, when we moved here, this was literally what the farm looked like. It was, you know, corn stubble, lots of annual weeds. The year after we bought it, it ended up, here's some pictures of just like the yard aspect of things. The The year after we bought it, it was, the chemicals wore off from, the herbicides they were using, and we had like just a complete and utter field of weeds. So let me go back. Let me switch up these. This is more of what the farm looks like currently. So let me see if I can find. Oh, this was the year after we bought it. We put in a giant field of sunflowers. Sunflowers are great because they get up fast and they actually will absorb a lot of the toxic chemicals and stuff. So we did a massive field of sunflowers. We opened this up to the community, let people come out and take pictures, and they absolutely loved it. And so we've tried to do that every year afterwards, just to create goodwill in the communities, let people come out and experience the sunflowers, which for us is a cover crop. So we basically, customers pay us to plant our cover crop every single year, which is awesome. So let's see, we started, here's a picture of what the farm looks like now. This is with strawberries covered up. Strawberries has been a big crop for us, but this was the fall of the second year, the first year we purchased it. So you can see the strawberries in the ground and then just open field. So lots of open field there. And then we put up a giant greenhouse. And then we'll shift here to like the layout of the farm here in a minute. But this great house, it's 36 by 200. The one mistake I would say is originally we were scaling for much larger in our greenhouse production. And since then, our business plan has changed a little bit where we're not looking for as many greenhouses and as large. So this would have been better if we had done maybe 2 36 by 100 greenhouses instead of 1 36 by 200 greenhouse. They're just giving us more optionality with temperatures and crops and that sort of thing.
Sure. Yeah, one thing that I kind of recommend to people is that they start small and get bigger. And that way they're kind of controlling the expenses, before they're kind of overextending themselves, before they really have a handle on what's happening and how things are going to go. You try things out on a small scale, and then when they work, you scale them up.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So this is the farm. This was the fall of year one. So this is the fall of 2021. You can see here the greenhouse. We got 4 hoop houses, production cropping here, and through here. This is now raspberries. This is most of this is planted with strawberries. There's a section here which is going to be in blackberries. One thing to notice is we do have train tracks right here. So literally about every 20 minutes or so, we have a train go by. We're actually sandwiched between tracks. So we've got tracks here, and then the other side of the farm, literally over here, I don't know if you can see my cursor, there's 2 other tracks, and those are the 5th busiest tracks in the US. Oh, so yeah, lots of trains. It makes it a little bit, we've gotten to the point where we don't hear the train whistle anymore at all. It's just not even a thought. But when you're outside trying to have a conversation or something, you just have to stop, smile, wait for the train to go by and start up again. But yeah, you can see kind of how we've set it up there. And one of the biggest things with starting your farm setup is thinking through like travel lanes and all of that. And so, yeah, it makes a big difference with how you have things set up. Just trying to think. This is this spring right here. So this is a picture of this spring, and I can dive in a little bit so you can see. There we go. So the house is there. We've extended the parking lot substantially, so the parking lot's much bigger. And in strawberry season, we just don't have any parking space. We have to actually have a ticket system which allows people to come park. This is our on-farm bus right here. So that's our retail store. We were going to do an off-farm retail location, and we still would like to do it at some point. But for now, we have an on-farm retail location, which is an actual bus. And the bus was to get around government regulations there. You can see we've got some coolers. So there's actually 3 different coolers right now, actually 4 different coolers we have now. We've doubled the amount of hoop houses. So you can see we've got 8 hoop houses instead of the year before we had 4. And then you can see the strawberry production there. Obviously strawberries right through here. And we do annual bed strawberries. So every single year we plant new berries and we rip up the old ones. Although we are switching those systems up a little bit. So now about 50 to 60% of the farm is in strawberries every single year. Other thing too, you want to think about for your farm is we have like a 10 basically step list of things that you want to have on your farm, like key focus points. And one of them is fertility. So you can see here, this is the fertility piles out here. There's a compost piles out here. And this is actually finished compost. So we actually make our own compost. but because the amount of compost we're looking for, we also buy in a fair amount. So this location is where the trucks back in to drop their loads. This is where we're making our on-farm compost out here. So yeah, those are one other thing that we're always looking at. And then back here in the corner, you always want to have some bees on the farm, but you never quite want them real up close to everything. So they're in the back corner here, and that seems to work out really well for that.
Cool. Michael, just so people can kind of get a sense of the scale, how large is the area that you're showing us right now?
Yeah, so this is an 8.1 acre or 8.01 acre property. So it's right in the middle of suburbia. I mean, right over here is a store and lock facility. This is a neighborhood here, more neighborhood over here. On the other side of the street from us is literally a machine shop and a business industrial park. So if we switch to like a Google view here, let's go to, there we go. This is the area. And that's the farm. So yeah, right in the middle of Central. That's why we called it the farm on Central. So.
It's beautiful. That's great.
Yeah.
I often, when I was working with farmers a lot, they had a hard time kind of visualizing that map view of their property. And Google Earth is just such a brilliant way to do that. It's easy, it's fast. You can just use Google Maps if you want to. With Google Earth, you've got a little opportunity to put some layers on, like streets or easements, property boundaries, or that kind of thing. But yeah, mapping is, for me, it's a big deal. That was one thing that really was helpful, was to get that kind of map view of the farm.
Yeah, and we actually, I'm not sure if I can pull it up here. I'm going to try to do it pretty quick, but we actually have the farm in Google Maps with different layers for like, that's something, let me see if I can find it in my places here, if it pops up here. Gosh, I'm not sure which one. Yeah, fortunately, I don't think I can pull it up right here as we talk, but we do actually use Google Maps to build out layers of the farm. And we'll have a layer that is like water, a layer which is roadways, a layer which is like production fields. So that's one way we build it out. And that way we can share it with different people that need access to that. Yeah. So yeah, that's a great idea for that. And I just blanking on which Google account I use, since I have so many, to find the actual farm, the farm map that we have on there. So
no, I have that trouble all the time. If I go in one way, it shows half the things, and if I go in the other way, it shows the other half of the things.
Yes.
So I'm always kind of confused. So the other question that I want to ask you, Michael, and our other presenters is, how did you go about deciding what to change?
Yeah.
We're going to be talking in a course that I'm going to be teaching about kind of the steps of making changes, deciding what to change, and how to make those decisions, and how to collect information that will help you make those decisions. So can you kind of speak to that a little bit about how you decided what to change, and then how that process went, and then whether it worked or not at the end?
Yeah. So, a couple of the things that when we were farming in New York, upstate New York, we realized is that greenhouse size mattered. So that was the reasons we went with this 36 by 200, is the larger the tunnel, the warmer it would stay. All right. So that was something we learned. All right. So then when we come here to Ohio, we should make our tunnel huge. Well, yes and no, because once we got to Ohio, we were 2 zones warmer, which meant that even our hoop houses now, we went to -9 degrees the other night, and or let us survive just fine. So we don't get that serious cold, which would cause major damage here. So having even small tunnels, which actually gives us way more optionality, actually worked really well. One thing we didn't think about back in New York was roadways. So once we started building our farm here, we thought through roadways from A to Z. We were always like, okay, what is the exact size we need to have of get people through? And so we're looking at turning radiuses on vehicles, and thinking about that tractor trailer aspect. So we don't need to get them in to deliver to the farm yard, but we do want to get them in to deliver to the for that compost area. So how do we build that large enough? Water was a huge thing. So that was thinking through, do we have enough water? Now, we haven't drilled our 100-gallon a minute well yet, but we already have that location thought out. We're tapped into now 2 smaller wells that give us a combined of about 30 gallons a minute. So that's been enough for us so far. But thinking through those aspects of things, how we designed our hoop houses. So that was a big thing. We know that most of our income comes from tunnels. And so we always want to think through how those are set up. So that was making sure that we had that, make sure the drainage was proper. So even though we are in a really sandy loam, when you have water sheeting off tunnels, there's still a tremendous amount of water. So we built French drains into the bigger greenhouses and just put more like catchment basins or channels to channel the water away from other tunnels. So that's kind of some of the big things there. It also too was thinking through the customer access too. Is back in New York, again, we were very far out. So this time we wanted to make sure that we had plenty of space for people to come in and park and really clear about once they're here, what they're going to do. So that was kind of the things there. Back in New York, we were much larger scale production. So we were 15 acres of vegetables. Our standard bed length were 150 to 300 feet long. Here, our max bed length is everything is standardized to 100 feet long. So, you know, when we're making planting decisions, it's always with number of beds times 100 instead of having to think through, well, how long are the beds in that area? This also allows us to have our ground cloth and our row cover always at standard length. So we know exactly how long those are all going to be. We don't have to have 16 different orientations or sizes of the different covers. It's always going to grab, you just have one big pile of covers instead of trying to have, a bunch of different lengths and sizes for the different crops.
Which makes things easier on your storage end and makes things easier on your application, like when you're applying that material. Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. That's a concept that I was reading the book, The Lean Farm, and that was just such a big aha moment for me was don't have 50 different kinds of everything. Kind of standardize yourself to a particular set of tools or a particular set of equipment or a particular size of something so that you can kind of streamline to do that. And that way you're saving money, you're saving energy, you're saving your time, you're saving labor costs. Yeah, awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah. Back to your point right there, I would say one of the things that we haven't done, which I would like to do, is standardize our bed systems. So right now we're running 3 different bed systems. We have a field plastic system where we lay biodegradable mulch, and then we mulch that with leaves that we get from the local municipality. And so that's a fair amount of our crop is planted on that. We also have a bare ground field system, which is on a 60-inch bed center. So we do semi-permanent beds here. But then we also have our tunnel system, which is based typically more on a 30-inch bed system because that's what fits in our tunnels a lot easier. But if we were to have one size between all of that, that would make it a little bit easier. And we may switch our field back to 30-inch bed systems with more of the BCS size. But right now, our cultivation and our field work is done by medium-sized tractors. So that's just a little bit better geared toward that. Although it does make switching between field and hoop house just a little bit challenging to go back and forth.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I always try to think in terms of an emergency.
Yeah.
If something bad happens, can I take something that I already have and apply it to the situation? So that might be something that we would consider in that vein as well.
One thing I would say would be that it would be really helpful to have irrigation sized under 10 gallons a minute. What I mean by that is if you are on garden hose sizing for your entire farm, it's way easier than bumping up to, let's say, 1 inch. Because when you go to 1 inch, now you're dealing with everything that's not garden hose sized. So now you're dealing with pipe thread. So if you can keep things at garden hose size for a 3/4 inch pipe, it makes everything much easier. 100-foot tunnels kind of max that out. It really wants 10 gallons a minute. You can force at least 10 gallons a minute through 3/4 inch as long as you have high pressure. So again, that's something, if you can keep that 70 PSI or so, you will get enough forced through that pipe to actually give you what you want. Although it is better to have some mains a little bit larger, and then maybe everything coming off the main is just going to be garden hose sized.
Sure.
So that is definitely something which made a difference for us. And I would recommend think through that as you're moving forward.
Sure. Sure. Let me check our time real quick. We've got a few minutes. So yeah. One thing that I have actually I'm a small sheep farmer in
Mhm.
Washington State, and when we purchased our property, which is only a couple or 3 acres, there was nothing here, and that was actually, like you say, an advantage to me because I'm a landscaper and have some
Mhm.
other things going on as well. And so I wanted to be able to lay out my property the way that I wanted it and not be kind of at the mercy of other people's ideas from the past.
Yeah.
But one thing that I actually really appreciate is the ability to be really flexible. So oftentimes here, when people have a pasture like my pasture where my sheep are at, they'll put in inset like ground set irrigation.
Yeah.
And I had some stub ups. There was no irrigation at all, just a line with some stub ups in the field. And the people before me had wheel line, but they didn't, or hand line, but they didn't actually use it. And they took it all with
Mhm.
them when they left. so
Yeah.
so we cut those off and actually put 3/4 inch hose bibs on them
Yeah.
because it's not that big a space. And at first I was like, no, I really want to get more water out there. And we're in the West, so we do have hot summers and we do have, the irrigation kind of goes downhill towards August. But I really appreciate the fact that if there's a dry spot out there, I can move the sprinkler over to the dry spot and I don't
Yeah.
have to be confined by the inset ground set sprinkler system or whatever that somebody else may have put in. So I also do rotational grazing with my sheep and
Mhm.
have movable electric fence paddocks. And that actually really helps me because then if there's a place where I don't want them to be, I can fence that off really
Mhm.
easily and really quickly without too much trouble. So that concept of kind of flexibility is
Mhm.
building that into the decisions that you make as far as getting set up with equipment and such. That seemed like a really important principle to me.
Yeah, now great aspect right there to think about. And one of the things that we've tried to do with our farm is we actually brought in a permaculture designer, a foodscaping designer to actually build out a lot of foodscaped place, like let's say profitscaping, because I mean things like willows and elderberries, and those are more perennial crops. We try to be very careful about putting those in with the opportunity of knowing, giving us a little bit of time to think about how we want the farm to go before we started putting those in. That's why we really haven't done any fruit and nut trees yet, because those are like 10 or 15-year goals. Elderberry is 2 years, and if you want to rip it up, you can rip it up and move it someplace else. So relatively easy. Blueberries, it took us a while. And I actually found those farm maps I wanted to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and pull those up here. This is one of the original Google Maps we created here. And you can see the different colors. So I can turn this off, and that turns different things on. So that was one of the things we really like to do, is just have those set up in Google Maps. It makes it super easy to share with other people. So we've got that. And then I want to show you one other thing we use here, which is our farm map. And this is actually what we share with our team. So our team uses this because this is how the farm is labeled. So we do GAP certification on the farm, and this allows us to have a location for every single crop comes from. So when I need to go pick winter radishes, I know that came from 4A, it came from bed 7 and 8. And when they harvest those, they put those in the log, and boom, that goes right into the certification log. So we use this internally. This is actually just done in Keynote. So we just took a picture, screenshot of Google Maps, dropped it in here. That's the Google map right there. Let me just hit Command Z to make sure it's exactly where I want it. And then we just use like little basically things to throw that on top. And so it makes it really easy to create those sections of where things are. We're not exact in this. You won't get exact because it's hard to do the exact number of feet, but it's close enough for most of what we're trying to show. And it gives a specific system. So I can sit in the office and someone says, hey, Michael, where is the current spinach we're harvesting from? And right now we're harvesting from tunnel number 3. So they can just say, hey, it's tunnel number 3. And they can go and look, there's tunnel number 3. They know exactly where to get that from. Strawberries this year, they are in 3C, 4C. It's bus 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's 1B, 1C, 2B, and 2C. So again, having that kind of information, putting that together, super helpful. The other thing I think I can show from this is our pathways. And it's a little bit harder because I think it'd been easier on the other one, but we've got the farm dissected by 2 main thoroughfares. One goes all the way down the farm right through here. So basically they can drive a tractor trailer if they want right back to the back right here through this thoroughfare here. The other one crosses here. So people drive in the main driveway. If we need to get them out to the farm, they can drive out through here. That's the main thoroughfare all the way through the farm. We also have a path that goes all the way around. We've kept open all the way around through here. It gets a little tight up through here because we're not trying to push the traffic here because this is where neighbors are. So they kind of typically will come back through up through the main drive through here. But that's kind of how we left those thoroughfares through the entire farm, 20 feet wide, to allow folks to go through there. And if you've got these weird shaped fields, those are what perennials go into. Because again, you want to set them for one time and then never deal with it again. They're going to be mulched really thick. So you're not trying to, have row cover that's fitting like a 20-foot bed, a 30-foot bed, a 40-foot bed, and a 50-foot bed. This is perennial willows and comfrey right now. So that's never really going to change. And it doesn't need to have anything special to it. The only thing that's going to change is the length of the drip tape. And so being able to have that, again, that's cheap, that's easy to set in place. So that's some of the things we've tried to set up and try to give us the flexibility of basically you've got the farm, but in the farm, you got all these little sections, which are 100-foot by 60-foot. And that's what the farm crops rotate through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I'm also a landscape designer. So that idea of like trying to figure out ahead of time where people are going to move to, where you need equipment to go to, that in landscape design is right at the very beginning of your planning process. So
yes,
I love that you were taking your time to actually think all those things through and plan ahead so that it was easier for later.
Yeah, I'm sure your designs look a lot better than mine do.
Actually, no. Actually, no. I am using a lot of those same kinds of tools, actually.
Okay.
Or just drawing on the back of a napkin where I know it's in my head, but I put it on a piece of paper so that someone else can understand what I'm doing. But no, that's great. Our time is about up, Michael, but I sure appreciate your time. Just a real delight to meet you in person. And a lot of the things that Michael was talking about, we're actually going to talk more about. So things like GAP certification and some of those technical terms that he was mentioning, we will talk about those. So if you're new to farming or you're new to this idea, we will go back and kind of give a little glossary of some of those terms, because Michael's here for that short period of time. He had to go quick and he can't stop and explain everything, but we will do that in our online farm planning course that we're putting together. So thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate your time and we will see you later.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.